I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are joined by a terrific author. His name is Dion Perry. He is the Australian writer behind a powerful book. It is called New Heart. It is a raw, inspiring heart transplant journey. After being diagnosed with viral myocarditis in 2021 and receiving a heart transplant in 2023, the author shares what it's like to fight your way through major procedures and rebuild your life. And when the transplant's life-saving meds triggered new complications, his story became an even deeper look at resilience, courage, and hope. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Authors Tranquility Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Dion, thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome.
This is quite an incredible journey. Bring us back to the beginning. When was it, or what was the first sign that something was seriously wrong?
It was back in just trying to think, it was probably late April of 2021 during the COVID pandemic.
Mm.
And I had escaped down into the Riverina and gone camping on my own. And I got to the end of the river and just didn't feel quite myself. I
Mm.
hadn't felt quite myself for a couple of days. And I decided to cut the trip short and
Mm.
come home 3 weeks early. And I got home and thought, winter's coming and it's very cold here where we live. We do get a little bit of snow. And I thought, I'll go cut some firewood. And I was normally very fit and strong. I would, normally be able to fill up my 8-foot tray ute with firewood, and I could not do it. I only got on, maybe a dozen pieces, and that was it. I came back and thought, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I've got some sort of, viral chest infection or something like that. So I made an appointment with the GP and went and saw her, and she said, yeah, it could be asthma. Let's go, send you over to the local hospital, get an x-ray, come back, and then I'll get the nurse to do a lung function test. Well, those tests concluded decisively that I did not have asthma. And she was a bit stumped. We're just going through all the things that I'd been through in the last few weeks. And I said, well, no, I haven't been exposed to anything because there was literally no one down the river. It was
Right.
COVID and everyone was locked in their houses. And so she grabbed my wrist and felt my pulse manually and said, you've got arrhythmia, heart arrhythmia. And I had no clue what that was.
Mm-hmm.
But it just means that your heart's beating out of step.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, I'll make a referral to go and see a cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I went home and made an appointment to see a acupuncturist who I knew well. I drove down to see him, and he took one look at me and said, I'll have to take you up to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, you can't. I've got the dogs in the back of the car and I can't just leave them there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drove back home. No sooner got through the door, I was lighting the fire, and I got a phone call from a senior doctor at the health clinic that I go to. And she'd been looking at my results as well. And she said, I'm sending an ambulance for you. And I thought, what? And anyway, she said, just don't argue with me, get in the ambulance. So I got in the ambulance and wondered, oh my God, what did I even lock the door on the way out? Because I was kind of being hustled out the door,
Right.
And of course, I text my wife because she was a lawyer and you couldn't always get her on the phone. And of course, she's trying to ring me while I'm strapped to the gurney in the back of the ambulance, and it's all happening. And got there and to the little hospital in the local town, and they said, we can't handle him here. You're going to have to take him to Goulburn. And so they took me to Goulburn, and because it was COVID, they stuck me in an ISO room and did PCR tests and so forth, and they all come back negative. But I'm just laying on the bed, hooked up to an ECG machine, and I'm looking at the screen going, that does not look right. I don't know much about ECGs, but I do know patterns. I've been a data analyst for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the heartbeat number, and it was over 200. And I said, there's got to be a lead or something off. So I'm looking at my chest trying to find the lead off, and I'll just push the nurse's button. She can come in and sort it out. She came in, went snow white, and started screaming code blue. And next minute I know I'm being pushed, ECG machine, everything, into the ICU. And I was in there, and I didn't really notice anything, but I'm very hard to cannulate. So they're trying to stick the needles in my arms to get some IV fluids into me. And all of a sudden, I just lost my breath. I could not breathe. And everything from there was a little bit fuzzy, because I could hear a medic calling out the blood pressure readings. And when it got to about 50/20, I blacked out. And I left my body. Well, this is what I saw. I left my body and went to I could have had 360-degree vision. I could see myself down on the table. I could see all these medics swarming around me. I had no recognition of my own body. And then I could see people who I knew were deceased behind what looked like a shimmering force field, like a veil. And I couldn't get through the veil. And I was zapped by the paddles and brought back to life. And then 10 minutes later, it was as if nothing happened. I just felt fine again.
Yeah.
And then there was a big heated argument among the senior medics about whether I should remain where I was in that hospital or go to a bigger hospital in Canberra. And they decided to take me to Canberra. And from there, it was over the next 3 or 4 days, I was finally diagnosed with viral myocarditis. And it's for those viewers who don't know what that is, it's it's a swelling of the heart due to some sort of infection brought on by a virus. Now, the virus couldn't be identified. We don't know what it was, and it's possible that the virus had been contracted 6 months before the actual attack. So, yeah, I don't know. Can't speculate about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it took a while to diagnose you. Do you feel your diagnosis was delayed? And do you think your prognosis
It
would have been
was
different?
delayed because certain procedures are only done on certain dates, and I'd been called into hospital on Thursday evening, woke up on the Friday morning, had an echocardiogram that morning, and then they said you'll have to wait until Monday until we can do an angiogram. And I said, oh, whatever. They did the angiogram. It only took about 10, 15 minutes. And I was just under local. And they pulled the wire out and said, well, the good news is everything's like all your valves and everything are pristine, absolutely nothing wrong in there. But your heart is 1.5 times the size it should be.
Mm.
And it's put, because it's pressing on your rib cage, because as it swells, it's damaging it.
Mm.
And I think it was, might have even been the next day, Tuesday morning, that I finally got to see the cardiologist, and he just came through with his entourage of, they with all the student doctors and registrars, and but didn't talk to me, didn't say anything to me. He spoke to his
Mm.
registrar and said he's got myocarditis and sleep apnea, and just moved on. Didn't explain it to me or anything, and it was I was reaching for my phone to try and look up what the hell he just said, and finally the registrar came back about 2 hours later and said, "There's nothing we can do for you here." Handed me a fistful of scripts and set me down to the checkout lounge to wait for the discharge summary.
Mm.
And my head was spinning. I just couldn't even comprehend what was happening, what had happened,
Mm.
or what was going to happen in the days to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just shocking. They would send you home in a condition like that, that they wouldn't observe you while they gave you the medications. It was so you went home.
Yeah, I went home because like most hospitals, there was a waiting list for beds, and they needed my bed, so I could rest at home. But I wasn't. The scary part about it was I wasn't even given a follow up appointment with the cardiologist. I had to make that myself, and then when I finally found him at his private practice. Um, he didn't recognize, he didn't know who I was.
Hmm.
I had to explain to him that he diagnosed me with this, and his registrar had sent me home,
Hmm.
and he had to go through his notes to figure out what I was saying. And I thought, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. But thankfully, I managed to find a heart doctor locally in Goulburn, and I saw him probably every month for about 6 months, and my condition was just going downhill.
Yeah.
You
So I
know,
guess you
I
were in
think
heart failure at this point.
think by October I was forced to take a redundancy from work, and that was all a bit of a stuff up on my part because I didn't file the right paperwork, and being the public service, so they're very particular about that kind of thing. And yeah, but anyway, they sorted it out, and I did get the payout. But I haven't really worked I haven't worked for an employer since then.
Mhm.
I was able to access my super, and I was able to get a payout from them as well. But that's
Mhm.
why I got into writing, because I needed the job I could do from home
Yeah.
around medical appointments. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So I imagine you progressed into heart failure. And at one point they said to you, you're going to need a new heart.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. And the doctor I was seeing had broached the subject with me, and he said, "I will give you a referral to another doctor who's a cardiologist, and you can see him. He's just literally just across the hall when he comes in." And so I went and saw him. I saw him a couple of times, and he said, You're gonna if you're gonna have a heart transplant, you got to commit to it." And I didn't really understand what that meant, but I said, "Yeah, I'm all for it." So I was sent to St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, um, for what they call a workup, and they put you through psychological evaluations. They put you through a number of um, tests, medical tests, and basically see whether or not you're a suitable candidate for a transplant. Because if you're not, then they'll refuse it, and you won't get put on the list.
They want to make sure you're going to be medically compliant and do everything you need to do to sustain your
Yeah,
life after getting the transplant, right?
they basically own you after that. And if
Yeah.
you step out of line, then you'll just get scratched off the list like someone's scratching something off their shopping list.
Right.
And so I went. We continued to go down to Sydney. We used to catch the train down and stay overnight. My wife and I, that is. And then go to the appointment next day, and then catch the train back home. And I was never a well man on the train. You know, it was a 3 hour clickety clackety journey on our old trains. And by the last appointment was in mid December, and the head cardiologist there said to me, "You're not going to make it to a heart transplant. You can come in and we'll just make you comfortable while you die, or we can fit you with a LVAD, which is a battery powered impeller pump on your heart." And so I decided to go with that, and it was just, I mean, you can't even imagine how awful it was. It caused chronic migraine headaches. I was in pain for 7 months, taking strong opioids, and they were just like taking Tic Tacs. They did absolutely nothing for the pain. And of course, as soon as you go onto an LVAD, you got to have a driver's license test. And I was so sick that I failed it, and that was the end of that. I haven't had a license since then. And luckily, I think it was 7 months later. It was I got fitted in January of 2023, and I got a call on the evening of the 1st of September 2023, and we were driving down. It was -6 degrees, frost, no snow, but frost, ice, black ice all over the road. And this huge kangaroo jumped down in front of us. I mean, I'm talking 6 foot tall, smashed into the front of the car, just got up, shook his head like he just dipped his face in water, and bounced off. And we got out and had a look at the car, and the motor was still running, and we were debating, because we had a second car, whether we'd go back and get that or just push on. So we decided to push on, and by the grace of God or some divine force, we did actually manage to make it, but the car had to be towed home. It didn't, once it stopped, that was it. It wasn't going any further.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a horrific experience. But the heart transplant itself was, for me, was almost a non-event, because they took me in, and they take you through a process of identifying you and getting your consent, and then they do that about 3 times. And then they take you into a prep room, and the anaesthetologist was just talking to me, and then all of a sudden I just felt really dozy, and then I fell asleep. I didn't know how long it had been. I woke up in the ICU that had no windows, no clocks. Didn't know whether it's night or day. Barely knew where I was. And anyway, my wife told me later that it wasn't until 10 a.m. Like I was taken down around 6:30 in the morning. It wasn't until 10 a.m. that she got a call to say that the heart had been approved for implantation in me.
Mm.
And I mean, she was quite uh, beside herself with
Mm.
worry. And thankfully, she was able to talk to a previous heart transplant recipient who was in there for a checkup. And he said, look, just don't worry about it. The surgeons are the world class. And this is just routine surgery for them.
Mm.
We think of it as being a big deal, but for them, it's just another heart transplant.
Yeah.
And so,
So the surgery itself went smoothly. What
yep.
was it like during the recovery process? So that was probably more problematic. Was that more painful and so forth? Your chest
Yeah,
had been cut and so forth?
yeah, no, my chest had already been sliced open to fit the LVAD, so they had to re-slice it open, and it's not wired up, but it's not actually metal because I can go in a MRI, but it's some sort of exotic material that they
Mhm.
that they stitch you back up with, and there's no external stitches; it's all internal.
Mhm.
So I've got a beautiful scar down the front.
Mm.
And yeah, no, I think I was probably in hospital for about 3.5 weeks,
Wow.
up on level 10 in the cardiac ward. And during that time, the physios were getting me out of bed, and it was quite a circus actually, because they'd have to get you out of bed, and they'd have to push your drip, I don't know what's called, the drip machine.
Yeah,
And I
the
also
IV.
had
Yeah.
ketamine, a ketamine tube that I had to hang on to. And I
Mm.
was, I'd almost forgotten how to walk. It
Yeah.
was, it, um, so I was staggering around the ward, and eventually I got going. And they took me into the staircase and had me climbing up the stairs. But I had lost over that period between being down the river in 2021 to getting the heart transplant. I just lost half my body weight, and a lot of
Mm.
that was muscle.
Yeah.
And I was very, very weak. And we had to stay in Sydney at the hospital residence, which is like 2-story units, which is about 2.5 blocks away, which is, I mean, that would have been nothing for me,
Right.
before the heart transplant, but afterwards it was quite a slog, and it was uphill on the way there. And, but it was good for me because at least it was building me back up again.
Mm.
And then on the day that I was sent home, I was trying to get the stairs, up the staircase, because our room was upstairs. And I almost made it, and I got to the second last step and went down on one knee, and I
Uh,
literally didn't have enough strength to pick myself back up.
yeah.
And there was no one in the vicinity who was strong enough to just pop me back on my feet. And so, of course, they had to get an ambulance, and they insisted on I go back to the ER. And of course, then it's a 7, 8 hour wait in the
Mm.
ER. And then they decided that they would send me upstairs, and then I got sent across the road to another smaller hospital called Sacred Heart. And I woke up about 4 past 4 in the morning, and I was sick as a dog with a nasty form of gastro called norovirus.
Yeah.
And there was um, no hope of me going back to the residence for at least another fortnight. And I
Amazing.
had to be in isolation because it's really contagious. And I think that was actually worse than the heart transplant, and it's
Ah,
very difficult to get out of the body.
yeah,
It's even when you actually recover from it, it stays in the liver, and
yeah.
as soon as your immune system drops, it can make a comeback,
Ah.
and
And you were on immune suppressant drugs to begin with.
I'm on the immune
Yeah.
suppressant for the rest of my life, and
W-
it's toxic drugs.
Was
Yeah,
there a was there a time or after your transplant where you started to feel a little bit more normal, where you were starting to feel well?
yeah, yeah. There was. It was about let me think. I lose track of time, but it was around January, February of 2024, and I decided that I'd redo rehab at at the local hospital in Goulburn. Well, it's local to us. So I'd go down there every Tuesday, and it was they used to do a seminar first. The nurses do a seminar, and then you'd have about an hour of physio in a gym. Just
Mm.
nothing heavy, just light weights and exercise bike and um, treadmill and that kind of thing. And at the same time, I started walking, getting up for breakfast and heading out with the dog
Mm.
and just walking the streets, basically around around the back streets. And I built up to about 10, 15 blocks, and the dog loved it. And
Yeah.
he'd be barking and carry on while I was still trying to get dressed because he was ready to go.
Yeah.
And
But
and yeah, that's it.
there came a time when your medications weren't working or you had problems with them. Tell us
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Towards the end of 2024, I um I'd had to go into St Vincent's probably monthly or 6 weekly or thereabouts
Mm.
to get what's called a heart biopsy, and they just stick a wire needle with a wire into your heart, and they just take a little sample. It's not painful; it's just awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And the particular registrar that was there, I kind of had a bit of a rapport with her, and she was looking at my medical charts. And she said, your kidneys are on a downward trajectory. There's no up and down. It's just going down.
Mm-hmm.
And she made a referral to um, see nephrologist, and somehow or another the referral got lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and saw my GP because she was ringing me up saying, "Have you made an appointment? Have you got an appointment?" And I said no, no. So I went and saw my GP, and she sorted it out, and went and saw him, and he said, "Well, there's no good news." He was very blunt about it. He says, "Absolutely no good news," and he said, um, "You're really going to need." Because he was a private consultant, and he said, "You're really going to need ongoing care. So I'll make a referral to the chief nephrologist at the Canberra hospital, and he'll take over your care." And anyway, I went, managed to get to see him a few weeks later, and he said, "Well, I want to send you down to Sydney for a kidney biopsy." And so I said, "All right, I'll go down and I'll stay overnight." And I ended up staying 2 nights. And I just thought, well, it'd be similar to a heart biopsy. It wouldn't be painful at all. And it was the most excruciating thing I've ever had. And afterwards, you've got to turn yourself over on a very narrow surgical bed, then they slide you onto a proper bed, hospital bed, and you've got to lie flat for 6 hours.
Hmm.
And so you got through that, and the results come through, and they said you got tubular necrosis, and I looked that up, and it was just really just the tubes going into the kidneys that were
Dying.
not well. And
Yeah.
she said to me, "Well, you can recover from this, right? You can. It's not, it it's just gonna get. It's not gonna be as bad as if they think." Well, I didn't recover, and I continued to go downhill. And on New Year's Eve, of all things, the doctor who was covering the Christmas period was ringing me up daily, seeing it to see whether I was still alive.
Hmm.
I said, "Yeah, I am, but I really can't get out of bed much."
Jesus.
And she said, "That's it. I've had enough. You're not going to die on my watch." Wrote me a referral letter, said, "You get in the car with your wife, don't you drive?" And I said, "Well, I can't drive, I haven't got a license." She said, "Well, don't drive anyway. Go straight to Canberra Hospital, and don't make any stops. Just go straight there. Hand this letter to the nurse." And I did that. She went white and
Hmm.
said, "Come with me." I was taken straight out the back. Because normally you're left to sit for hours in the ER. She took me straight out the back. Within 2 hours, I was taken upstairs to the kidney ward. And because the next day was New Year's Day, they couldn't really do much for me. I just sort of slept. I slept anyway.
Hmm.
And next day they came in and they said, "Right, well, you got to be fitted with a vascular catheter, which will go into your chest on your right side. It's just here, still there." And so the surgery's just done under local. She said, "And then we'll take you straight over to dialysis."
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, okay." So I got over, and the the dialysis nurse was an American, and I was watching the cricket, and he didn't understand cricket because Americans don't understand cricket.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain it to him, and then I thought, he's distracting me. Why is he distracting me? And they do that when there's something bad coming, and they don't want to tell you about it
Hmm.
until the last minute. And the phlebotomist had come in and taken, I kid you not, about 10 vials of blood
Hmm.
and taken them to pathology. And most of them were for a hematologist.
Hmm.
And they said, "All right, you can only do a short session for your first go at dialysis." So it was
Hmm.
only like 3 hours. And then he said, "We're waiting on 2 bags of plasma." And I had to sign my life away, as you do. And I was so used to it by then, I just
Hmm.
signed it and um, thought, why do I have to have plasma? And it turned out that I had a blood condition that was caused by one of the immunosuppressant drugs
Hmm.
that was now destroying my, it's called TMA. I can't give you the medical name of
Right.
that you can look it up, but um, it destroys your red blood cells.
Hmm.
And my count was down around 50, and that's why I was feeling woozy. You just don't
Hmm.
have enough. You can't, the blood can't oxygenate. And so I thought I had to have another biopsy. It wasn't as painful this time because I think because I was expecting it to be,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. I still had to lie sat flat for 6 hours. 2 days later, I was taken back to dialysis for my second session, and the nephrologist came in and he said, the bad news is your kidneys look like Swiss cheese. And he said, you're not going to recover from it. And the other extra bad news is that because you've got TMA, you're ineligible for a kidney transplant. And I thought, oh, that's great. So they gave me the hematologist had to write a detailed document to send to the Federal Minister for Health, or it might have been the State Minister, I don't know, to get approval for a very expensive drug called eculizumab. And it is toxic. I mean, seriously toxic. They actually wheeled me over to the cancer ward to administer it. So
Dion, I hate to interrupt, but we're almost out of time. So I just want to ask you this. Did the new drug help? Were you able to get to recover?
Yeah, it did. It did help. It took a year of infusions.
And your kidney function came back?
Kidney function did not come back, but the TMA is in remission.
Okay. So you still have to use dialysis?
Still have to use dialysis. There's no end in sight.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep you in my prayers. This is a very brave book to share your experiences with others. And it's no fun being part of the medical system. You know, that's for sure. I say I do everything in my power to stay out of that little robe that doesn't close in the back. Because
we're much lucky. I mean, we're lucky in Australia because we pay 2% fee on top of our tax that pays for Medicare, which basically means all 90% of our medical stuff is covered by that. But I also have private health as well. So yeah.
Thank God for that. I wish you Godspeed. Let me remind the folks at home the name of this book. The name of the book is New Heart. It's a powerful reminder that survival is physical, emotional, and deeply personal. Dion, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate your time, your insight, and your candor, and I wish you Godspeed. I'll keep you in my prayers. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time.